would like to thank KEDA, the Economic Development Council, and Natalie Bright for lunch today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have one bill introduction for the House Commerce Committee. That'd be Scott Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Scott Schneider on behalf of the National Association of Professional Employee Organizations. I'd like to introduce RS number 2931 that would move our registration from the Insurance Department to the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, so seeing no objection, we'll accept the bill.
Okay, we are here today to have a hearing on SB 430, so I will open up the hearing for that bill. We will start with an overview from our reviser, Charles Reimer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the Joint Senate and House Commerce Committee, and Chairman Tarwater. So this is an intensely negotiated bill, and so I'm going to just provide some quick highlights of the major provisions as I understand it from the parties, and then let them discuss these provisions. I've just added some section numbers and page numbers to the provisions I think you'll be hearing about today, just in case if you want to look those up in the bill while there's testimony, you can do so easily. So the first major provision would be that with respect to this workers' compensation bill is that caps on benefits have been increased. That includes the permanent total disability cap, partial disability cap, permanent partial disability when functional only. The death benefit has increased to $500,000, and as the committee will recall, that was has been an issue. All of these caps. There's also a new adjustment provision for the caps starting in 2027. Notices of injury by employees has been extended. It's changed to 30 days from the date of accident or injury, or 20 days from the last date of employment. There are a number of changes that are intended to ease case administration and also changes to benefit awards. Medical records may be now be admitted without the necessity of a deposition. They're required to be exchanged prior to the preliminary hearing as well, without charge. There are some changes to the future medical treatment provisions, the presumptions and the burden of proof. That's based on whether or not there's been an invasive treatment. The procedure for future medical treatment disputes has also been changed, and it's now limited to the procedure set out in 44.510K, not the preliminary hearing procedure. There's also a presumption against attorney fees if benefits are provided within 30 days. Post-award benefits are provided within 30 days of an application. There's a provision for, or some changes to court-ordered independent medical examinations. Only one such exam may now be ordered by the administrative law judge unless there's agreement by the parties. That must be done prior to the pre-hearing settlement conference. And the issues that the independent medical examiner can examine are limited unless there's agreement of the parties. There's a streamlined procedure for settlements, use of a form to be supplied by the director if both parties are represented by counsel and the claim is over 18. So it can just be, settlements can just be by written means. Provision for impleading of the principal employer by the Workers' Compensation Fund is allowed. There are some changes to reductions in benefits on the basis of retirement benefits that the injured employee receives. The Social Security benefit, the reduction is reduced. It is now 50%. And there's no offset for Social Security for temporary total disability and temporary partial disability, but there is an offset for those benefits, for retirement benefits from the employer. The wage calculation has been adjusted to include vacation, sick leave, and paid time off. There were some changes to bring the scheduled injury impairment and general bodily injury impairment to reconcile those provisions. I think, and those basically functional impairment for both general bodily impairment and scheduled impairment. And they're both to be established by competent medical evidence based on the 6th edition of the AMA Guides to the Evaluation of Permanent Impairment. A couple of provisions to sort of keep up with the progression of technology. Benefit payments under the bill can now be made by electronic funds transfer or payment card if agreed by the parties. And also hearings may be recorded and then transcribed after the fact from the recording. Finally, if you look at Section 1, you'll see that the Kansas Army and Air National Guard has been brought under the provisions of the Workers' Compensation Act. And that's a quick overview of the major provisions. There are many additional changes to the Workers' Compensation Act, but I think these are some of the ones that you're going to be hearing a lot about from the parties today.
Thank you very much. Committee questions for the reviser. Senator Ware.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I see that we have some nice healthy increases on the caps of benefits increased, the first thing you talked about. How with these new, assuming we pass this, where does that leave us in comparison to other states? I know currently we're at the bottom or nearly there.
Senator, I'd have to probably pass on that to the conferees. They may be able to assist you, but I can try and look that up if they don't have answers, but I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, other questions? Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a question, Charles, but I just wanted to thank you and your team for going through this process. I know it's been almost a year-long negotiation, and this bill has gone through several different renditions, and you have really been a trooper in your team. So thank you very much, sir.
Committee, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Charles. Appreciate it. We will move on to proponent testimony. Committee, we will hold questions until both proponents have had a chance to testify. And we will start with Tony Anderson on behalf of the Kansas Chamber, NFIB, Kansas SHRM, and KSIA. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you all very much. Thanks for having me. My part of this is with Mr. Cooper here. We're going to tell you kind of how we got here and why we're here. So in 2011, there was an effort to change the workers' compensation statutes. In 2010, there was a group of lawyers, 4 from labor, 4 from the industry, and they put together the bill that ultimately these chambers passed almost unanimously in 2011. We haven't really revisited the Workers' Compensation Act since then. And of course, there's been some need for changes to the act, including about the caps. So beginning last year, we started talking together, a group of labor attorneys, a group of industry attorneys. And over the course of this past year, we've had lots of meetings, we've had lots of emails, conversations, etc., and we've all worked on trying to come up with some revisions to the Workers' Compensation Act that make sense, can streamline the system, and also balance the interests of both employers and in injured workers. What we have here in Senate Bill 430 is our best effort and what we think is a good bill for you to consider and hopefully pass without change. There's been a lot of work done by all of the attorneys that have been involved. Amongst us, the group, there's probably 250 years of experience in workers' compensation on either representing injured workers or representing employers. The industry groups are supportive of this, the Chamber, the KSIA, Kansas SHRM, NFIB. Without their support, we wouldn't probably be here. We've been helped along the way because the Attorney General in this case has weighed in, and he is aware of what's going on. He's satisfied, as I understand, with what's going on here. And of course, Kansas Labor, and Jeff will explain, their constituency groups, I believe, are all in support of this. There are certainly, as in any bill, as you all know, it's not a panacea. It doesn't fix everything that everybody would want, but it is a good balancing test and a good balancing act between the two different parties to these cases. And workers' compensation is a difficult subject because it deals with not only the employees' injuries, but also the employers who are paying into the system to be able to take care of those injuries. So that balance has to be met, and we believe that this bill does that. I'm going to yield my time at this point to Mr. Cooper because he's going to talk to you a little bit about what's in the bill and how we got here.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. We have Jeff Cooper from Cooper Law Office. Welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to testify here today in support of Senate Bill 430. I also want to thank the chairs, Senator Erickson and Representative Tarwater, for their attention to workers' compensation in Kansas and for encouraging the parties to get together and work forward together for a solution. Tony and I have a lot of cases against each other, and I rarely agree with Tony on most things, but the comments he made today, I agree with 100%. There has been a lot of work put into this proposal. We had 4 attorneys from the labor side and 4 from the business side, employer side. I do want to kind of thank the other attorneys that assisted on this committee: Jan Fisher, McCullough Wareheim, LeBunker, representing AFL-CIO, Keith Mark, attorney from Kansas City, Mark and Burkhead, on behalf of Teamsters, Phil Slape and Howard and Wichita, representing KTLA. All the parties to this bill have worked very hard, and we believe that Senate Bill 430 represents a compromise put together by both sides, and it is in everybody's best interest here in the state of Kansas. And we would ask you to pass the bill in its current form without any amendments. Charles talked about what the bill does, and it does increase benefits in death cases from currently $300,000 to $500,000. Most importantly, it increases permanent total disability benefits from the current standard of $155,000 to $400,000. These are meaningful and necessary increases in caps in Kansas. Also increases permanent partial disability benefits from current standard of $130,000 to $225,000, and functional benefits from $75,000 to $100,000 on those cases that involve functional impairment only. As Charles mentioned, there are COLA increase mechanisms in the bill starting in 2027. Those caps will rise in the same proportionate percentage as the gross average weekly wage in the state of Kansas that's currently monitored by the Division of Workers' Compensation. So hopefully those benefits will keep up with the time, so to speak. There are numerous administrative changes in the act that we believe increases in efficiency, reduces delays, and also reduces costs. Charles went through those in some detail. The most important ones, I think, deal with some changes to future medical, if there has been invasive treatment, then those benefits pretty much will remain the same as they are now. But on minor cases where there's no invasive treatment, it gives the authorized treating physician a little more authority in that regard. Importantly, Social Security retirement benefits, as you all probably recall previously, if someone was on Social Security retirement and was also working and had an injury, the employer got 100% credit for the retirement benefits. This bill reduces that to 50%, which we think is a reasonable compromise on this issue. Also importantly, there is no offset for temporary total benefits. So while the worker is injured and not able to earn that second income that they were relying on, they will get full credit and get whatever temporary benefits they're entitled to under the law. We believe those are all important changes. There's other administrative changes that I believe will make the system work better. As Tony said, you had 8 attorneys working on this. We also run those proposed changes by all the respective parties. Mr. Anderson listed out the groups he worked with, but we worked with AFL-CIO, Teamsters, Working Kansas Alliance, all the groups associated with labor here in the state of Kansas. In summary, we believe it does represent a delicate balance and supports the needs and interests and concerns of all the parties in the workers' compensation system. We would request that the bill be passed in its current form and no amendments to avoid the disruption of the delicate balance that we've been able to negotiate through long and sometimes arduous process here. So thank you for the opportunity to testify here today. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Committee, that is the end of our proponent testimony. Questions for Mr. Anderson or Mr. Cooper? Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony. This is my first time serving on this committee and hearing the information for the first time, so the rest of the committee members may already know the answer to this. How do you define and who defines total disability and partial disability?
Generally, there's a couple of different people that weigh in on that issue. First is the doctor who treats, and the claimants attorneys may have their doctor, and the respondents attorneys will have their doctor, and to make a determination as to what physically the claimant is able to do after they've been injured. There's also likely going to be a vocational person who is going to weigh in on how does the injury affect the person's ability to access the open labor market. So those are kind of the people who are involved, the experts that are involved, but ultimately the decision comes down to the judge as to their review of the evidence and determination as to whether the person is realistically and essentially unemployable. That's how we determine if they're permanently totally disabled.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the responses. I have a few more, but that qualifies for me right now. Thank you.
Senator Ware.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll ask you guys the same question as I asked the revisor. If I'm understanding it right, we were at or near the bottom of the nation in our limits. How far up the ladder would this bill take us?
Yeah, to answer your question, I believe we were at the very bottom of the spectrum of the 50 states. This does raise us up from the very bottom. So it's definitely a step in the right direction, and I think is in best interest of the worker in the state of Kansas at the present time.
Thank you.
Representative Osmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've heard testimony previously in Commerce with regards to unemployment insurance about deficits being run for employers. And while that's a topic for another day, I wanted to find out as it relates to workman's comp, Are employers running a deficit? And if so, is there anything in this bill that addresses that?
Representative Osmond, you're my representative, actually. The answer to that is workers' compensation is self-funded. So the employers pay to either belong to a group of, an insurance pool, or they pay for an insurance premium. We don't have deficits necessarily in workers' compensation because the premiums will rise and fall depending upon what the level of benefits that are being paid out. And so that gets readjusted essentially every year. It's not the situation where you pay into a group fund like in unemployment. Everybody has their own separate policy within workers' compensation. So we don't see that issue in our rule.
Committee, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony and for your work on this bill. It's much appreciated. Committee, we do not have any opponent or any neutral testimony. I will draw your attention to the written testimony from Philip Slate, Kansas Chamber of Commerce, NFIB, Kansas SHRM and KSIA, Jeff King, and Jan Fisher. I'm sure that there is a punchline in there somewhere about 8 attorneys getting together and battling this out somewhere. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to watch this. But in all seriousness, I think those who've been on the Commerce committees have known that this is an issue that we knew we needed to deal with. It is a big issue. It's a touchy issue. And when Chair Tarwater and I, if I could speak for him for just a moment, we thought, what we need is for the stakeholders who have to live with the impact of a bill like this and the changes. We need them to bring us a solution. Otherwise, they may not like what the legislature does. And so to see this come to fruition to me is monumental. And I want to thank all of the parties, all of those people who put input in, who spent countless hours on behalf of those who will benefit from these changes. I want to thank you, and I want to thank our staff. Co-Chair Tarwater, anything?
I concur, and you certainly don't want the legislature writing these bills. But, I think the plan is that the Senate's going to pass this fairly quickly, and as soon as this committee receives it, we will pass it out as well, and we have commitment from leadership that they'll get it through as soon as possible so we can get this behind us and start down the road. Thanks, everybody.
Committee, seeing no other business before our committee today, we are adjourned.